Xtalks connects professionals in the life science, medical device, and food industries with useful content like webinars, job openings, articles, and virtual meetings to help you succeed in your career. This food industry-focused podcast brings together some of our editorial staff to share insights into the latest B2B industry news to help keep you up to date.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Xtalks Food Podcast. I'm Sydney Perlmutter, Senior Food Industry Journalist and Webinar Moderator at Xtalks.com, and this week I'm joined by Vera Kovacevic. Thank you so much for coming today. So I'm going to start us off with a story about sort of the state of lab-grown meat bans in the U.S. So they're becoming a little bit more common as governments in the U.S. and around the world are sort of reacting to the burgeoning cultivated meat industry. There's been significant investments, obviously, in tech advancements, but lab-grown meat, of course, still faces some legal challenges. There have been recent bans in Florida and Alabama, and of course in Italy, which have highlighted the growing resistance to these products. So in terms of the state of lab-grown meat bans, I'll talk about Italy first. So Italy was the first to ban the manufacturing, selling, and distribution of lab-grown meat, and that happened last year. Following suit, lab-grown meat was recently banned in Florida and Alabama as well. And these bans reflect concerns from traditional meat industries about market competition and consumer acceptance, of course. Now, in the U.S., cultivated meat has received approval from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, as well as the U.S. Department of Agriculture, or USDA. However, the European Food Safety Authority, or the EFSA, is expected to conduct a more stringent review. Despite these regulatory hurdles, the lab-grown meat industry has seen billions in investment but lacks widely available commercial products. So Alabama's Senate Bill 23 is the latest legislation, making it unlawful to manufacture, sell, or distribute cultivated food products. Violators can face misdemeanor charges, and food sales establishments risk having their permits suspended or revoked. The laws allow states' research and development on cultivated products to continue and take effect on October 1st, 2024. And then for Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis signed Senate Bill 1084, his state's ban on lab-grown meat, shortly after Alabama's bill was enacted. And these moves indicate a trend that could spread to other states, driven by traditional meat producers' concerns over losing market share. So, Vera, do you think that these concerns from meat producers are legitimate? Do you think that they have a right to be concerned about their industries sort of dwindling, or do you think it's a little bit premature?
I think it's a little bit premature and unfair, to be quite frank, because, for example, the dairy industry has had competition for a while now, right?
Yeah.
With like plant-based milk, right? And there's nothing they can do about it because it's coming from natural sources. This I know is like lab-grown meat, right? That needs regulatory approval first. I don't think if it has regulatory approval, I don't think that individual states, for example, should be overriding the FDA's stamp of approval. That's my personal opinion. I don't think that's fair of them to do that. Interestingly, these bans in Italy and Alabama and Florida, they are also banning like the manufacture. I think R&D is still allowed to happen. It's just like you're not allowed to manufacture the product for commercial purposes, which I think is quite a strict ban. It's not just selling, right? So I think that's a little bit too much and a little bit unfair. And quite frankly, it's not giving consumers the freedom of choice.
That's the thing. It really speaks sort of to a broader, free market. And in states like Alabama and Florida that tend to lean, a little bit more conservative, it's a little bit like contradictory in my opinion, because they are all about like freedom of choice and, being able to do what you want basically. And this is sort of limiting that, right? So it's kind of interesting to see. On the other hand, I also understand that, traditional meat production is important to these states, but I agree with you in that it's a little bit premature. And I don't think it will have the impact that they may think it will. Like, it's still going to be a thing, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think they're thinking like, okay, 20 years down the line, this technology may be improved so much that it may actually take up a significant market share, right? That's what they're thinking. They're thinking about in the future. But if it's approved by the FDA and the USDA, as you said, I don't think they should, even have the right to ban it in the state. That's my personal opinion. So that's kind of disappointing. I wonder if that will change in the future as it becomes more common, as cultivated meat becomes more common and more people have tried it. Then maybe people in, let's say, Alabama and Florida will say, well, why isn't this available for sale here, right? How come I'm not getting this experience?
Right.
But I don't think I don't see it being like, I don't see cultivated meat taking up a significant market share in the next 2 or 3 decades at all for them to now jump and ban it, like out of concern for the meat industry. It's just like, what is it going to be? It's going to be less than 1% of the market share right now, cultivated meat. It hasn't reached that scale yet that it could be mass produced and distributed. So why are they doing this?
I guess they're just nipping it in the bud or whatever. Like
they're just, I don't know. It seems a little bit too controlling and like they're having too much of an influence, the meat producers, on things that they shouldn't be, right?
Yeah, I imagine
it's a free market.
Right. I think there was a lot of like lobbying that went on and, behind the scenes chats with politicians and whatnot. I'm sure it's 100% financially motivated, right? Even though, I was just going to get into this. Like there are a lot of like fiscal implications of these bans, right? They're pretty significant. So for example, Alabama's bill could increase state and municipal fund receipts from fines and court costs. And it could also increase administrative obligations for state departments responsible for health and agriculture. And as we know, lab-grown meat has existed actually for a little over 10 years now, since 2013, when it debuted at Maastricht University. Yet consumer access remains limited, like we were saying. FDA approvals currently cover only Upside Foods and Good Meat, the 2 companies that produce it, but their products are not yet available in stores. High-end restaurants in Washington, D.C. and San Francisco briefly offered lab-grown meat, but these offerings have since ended. The industry faces major challenges in scaling up cell production and, of course, getting those costs down. And Governor DeSantis's rhetoric against lab-grown meat reflects broader cultural and political dynamics, suggesting that further bans might emerge. And I was also going to talk about, you said that plant-based milk is a competitor with the traditional dairy industry, but there's also like lab-grown dairy as well with like precision fermentation too.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not banned anywhere.
To my knowledge, it's not. To my knowledge, it is not banned. And I'm wondering, with potential further bans, in the future, I'm wondering if you think like maybe like precision fermentation dairy would be a target.
I don't think so, because it's like widely sold and distributed now, right? Is that true? Precision?
Yes,
fermented?
it's not like, I wouldn't say it's
approved.
It
right?
is approved. It is
By the
approved, and it
FDA,
has been like I think for longer than meat, the lab-grown meat has. But I think it's still kind of few and far between to find them both in like retailers and at food service establishments. Like it's a little bit niche still, but I don't think there's as much of a scare or it's not as taboo, I guess. Yeah, because we're dealing with dairy, I guess.
Yeah, because they're fermenting essentially like a few or 1 or 2 dairy proteins.
Yeah.
Basically that technology. I think like in every industry, there's going to be some new product launch that's going to perhaps one day outcompete the original. Think about like the, what was I going to say? The transportation industry, right? We used gasoline and now there's more and more electric vehicles.
Yeah, you're right.
Did we ban electric vehicles? I mean, no. Did it take a while for that technology to develop and be implemented and be adopted and scale up? Yes, of course it did. Same thing with cultivated meat. I mean, I don't think they should just ban it right away, especially if there are no safety concerns. I know, didn't you say that the European Food Safety Authority is still reviewing it?
Yeah, they're still reviewing it. It hasn't been approved there yet. I think the only other country where it has been approved or where a company can sell it is Singapore, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is interesting because Usually when it comes to pharmaceuticals, usually it's the European Medicine Agency that approves them first.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then a few months later, the FDA tends to approve them. So this time the FDA approved
something first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting to me.
Well, what I've noticed about like food in Europe is that, there are more, we talk about banned foods a lot. Europe has like a pretty stringent and strict food regulations in general. I would say they're a little bit tougher on especially like additives and like colors and dyes, things like that, and preservatives. And I think because of that legacy, because of that history of like being so stringent, they're treating lab-grown meat the same way.
Do you think that if lab-grown meat is not approved in Europe, do you think that will cause more states to want to ban it in the U.S.?
That's a good question.
Or do you think that'll be a cause for concern in the U.S. too, now that it's approved? Like, people are going to question, why is there not an alignment on such a big topic, right?
That is a good question. I mean, you're making me think if Italy hadn't banned it, would these states have followed suit afterward? Like, did Italy like lead the charge in this?
I think so, for sure.
Yeah, I think they did. I say yes and no because, like I was saying, there's so many foods that are banned in the EU, so many ingredients that Americans wouldn't bat an eye at. They don't they wouldn't think twice about. So on that side, I would say no, but also yes, because I think it's going to be like much bigger than these ingredients that you've never heard of before. It's already such a controversial topic. Yeah. So I think, if the EFSA does come out and ban it, I think it will have the FDA and USDA maybe. I don't think they would ever retract that. Mm-hmm. Can they do that? That's actually a good question.
I mean, I'm sure they have improved drugs that later were taken off the market. So it does happen. Right? Maybe they will word it like, in light of new evidence, blah, blah, blah. I don't listen. I think they were pretty stringent, the FDA, in their review. I'm sure, it's safe. But yeah, let's see what Europe decides, and then if it aligns with each other.
And that, and your analogy with transportation was actually pretty apt, because I take the same view with transportation as I do with like lab-grown meat. Like, we have become used to, gas, cars that take gas and diesel, but we're also becoming used to electric cars and hybrids and whatnot. And I have the same exact thoughts with lab-grown meat. I think like they're the new kid on the block, akin to electric. But I think there's always going to be a traditional meat,
for sure,
industry. And I think they'll have to work together rather than hate each other.
Yeah. They're going to have to think of ways to coexist. Mm-hmm.
Yes, because I know that people are very much anticipating and are happy about lab-grown meat, vegetarians, vegans, otherwise. Maybe not even them. Maybe they still wouldn't eat it. But, I'm eager to try it. But I also know that people do not like the prospect of traditional meat going away. So, true. I agree. They have to work together. And I was going to talk a little bit about there's a coalition of EU member states actually that include Austria, France, Italy, and then 9 other countries as well, that has called for a public debate on lab-grown meat, which considers ethical, economic, and sustainability concerns. So, we already said this, but lab-grown meat isn't yet available on grocery store shelves in the U.S., but the bans in Florida and Alabama, of course, reflecting traditional meat producers' fears. And some in the livestock industry worry that these actions could lead some states to impose stricter regulations on meat production as well. So the U.S. Cattlemen's Association has long advocated for labeling rules that reserve the term beef for livestock products, right? So similar to dairy producers who don't like the use of the term milk, right? On
like plant-based milk,
right? They don't even just milk. They don't, like plant-based. They would want it to be called like plant-based beverage or nut milk or nut beverage or something. Yeah, something kind of ridiculous like that. So they've really thought about this in advance. And then aside from Florida and Alabama, other states like Arizona and Tennessee have introduced similar bills, though they're less likely to pass. So yeah, in terms of labeling, I mean, obviously we don't have these products on the market yet, but what do you expect, or what do you think would be would get across the message that this is lab grown, but also while being respectful to the meat industry?
I like the term cultivated meat.
Yeah, I like it too.
I don't think many people would understand what that is.
Yeah.
I don't like the term lab grown meat just because I feel like it sounds like, people may get afraid. What is that?
Yeah,
lab grown? Like
it's kind of
artificial.
Like, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I like the term cultivated meat, and I think maybe they should go with that. That's my opinion.
It's kind of like when global warming turned to climate change.
Yes.
It's kind of like that sort of like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad.
I mean, yes, it's bad.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean.
Yes.
I don't like the term lab grown. I think it may give some people anxiety or worry about something that's not necessary. So I think they'll go with cultivated meat.
Yeah. And you're right. Like there's still an aspect of education that will need to come in. And yeah, because people will need to understand what it is, and that could take a while. I mean, you and I know, I've known for a while, but that's just because I write about this all the time, so I do know. But what I'm going to talk about next, I've never heard of before. All right, so our next story is about xylitol. Now, this is a new innovation, or not a new ingredient, but new from this specific company, Wisdom Natural Brands, and it marks a significant development in the natural sweeteners market. So the company Sweet Leaf that makes this xylitol recently expanded its product line with a new single ingredient xylitol reduced calorie sweetener, and it offers consumers a way to enjoy sweetness from nature with only 10 calories per serving, mirroring the taste of sugar without its negative impacts on blood sugar levels or dental health. So if you, like me, had never heard of xylitol, it's a sugar alcohol naturally found in various fruits and plants, and it's been used for decades as a sweetener and dental health aid. And the Sweet Leaf xylitol is distinct because it contains only pure xylitol without any additional fillers or additives, making it a perfect one-to-one substitute for sugar in cooking, baking, and beverages. And additionally, it's keto-friendly, gluten-free, vegan, and non-GMO project verified, catering to a wide variety of dietary preferences and needs. And xylitol isn't only about sweetness either. Like I was saying, it also boasts dental benefits by reducing the risk of tooth decay, unlike traditional sugar. And research has shown that xylitol can reduce harmful bacteria in the mouth, potentially preventing cavities. So have you ever heard of xylitol?
I believe I have. And maybe, can you please do me a favor? This is actually very important to me.
Yes.
I need you to fact check two things for me. Number one, is xylitol used in a lot of sugar-free gums? And number two, is it poisonous to dogs? Because I believe it is.
Yes, it is. I think I want to say yes to both of them. Yes.
Okay. Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
It's very important for people to know because one of my friend's dogs got a hold of her pack of gum.
Oh no.
And it went into it would start shaking. It almost went into a coma because it had xylitol.
Oh
and
no.
xylitol is poisonous to dogs.
Yes.
So anybody using any ingredient with xylitol needs to know they cannot give their dog a sample of it. I'm not sure about cats, but is it poisonous?
It is. I was just rereading this. Yes, it's highly toxic to dogs. So pet owners must use caution when storing products containing xylitol. And I think you're right. Gum.
It's in gum.
Yeah,
right?
it's in gum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So of course, most people have probably had it then. Mm-hmm. Most people have tried gum. I'm just concerned. I'm just wondering, so this new product, how is it new then? If it's like a similar to xylitol, or
it is xylitol. It's just new from this company specifically.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And there are other companies that make it and are used, sell it to companies to put in their gum or whatever else. So yeah, it's not new. Xylitol isn't new, but it's new for this company. Yeah.
And this company is called
Sweet Leaf.
Sweet Leaf.
Mm-hmm.
And is Sweet Leaf selling it to other businesses or directly to consumers?
Looks like directly to consumers. And it comes in like a pouch sort of that, and and it looks like sugar pretty much.
Okay.
So I think for consumers, it's more to put on in coffee and what, to bake with. So it's, basically a 1-to-1 sugar substitute, but with less calories, apparently better for your teeth as well. But yes, toxic to dogs and in gum. So you're absolutely right about that. Yes.
And when you say 1-to-1 sugar substitute, do you mean like, let's say you have a recipe for muffins and they call for, 100 grams of sugar. Are you supposed to put 100 grams?
I believe so.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just as sweet. It's supposed to be just as sweet as sugar.
Okay.
So I think you'd put the same amount.
So 1-to-1 ratio, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Because I know some other artificial sweeteners or natural sweeteners, they're more sweet than glucose.
Yes.
So you need to lower the amount.
So I'll expand a little bit on some of the studies with xylitol. So there are, of course, benefits, but then there are also some risks. So its efficacy as a sugar substitute has been well documented, with benefits ranging from lower glycemic impact compared to sugar to its aforementioned dental advantages. However, like many sugar alcohols, xylitol can cause digestive upset if consumed in large quantity, and then the toxicity to dogs, as we talked about. But despite these concerns, xylitol remains a popular choice for those looking to reduce sugar intake due to its effectiveness in mimicking sugar sweetness and texture. So speaking of the digestive upset, I have found personally that if I'm trying like a lower sugar, chocolate or candy or something, yes, it's always going to upset my stomach. On the same note, a while back there was some World Health Organization guidance that advised against sugar substitutes for weight loss specifically. So I think people will, gravitate towards something like xylitol and stevia, if they are trying to lose weight, but they don't want to completely give up like sugar. Yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't the WHO suggestion based on artificial
It was,
sweeteners,
yes, it was
like
artificial.
the one in Diet Coke and
aspartame?
Yes. And the like, right? It wasn't about...
No, it wouldn't have been about stevia or xylitol. It was just for artificial. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that, these will be more popular. Really just depends on, how, if it truly is that 1-to-1, because that's a question I wonder about stevia. Like, is it as sweet as sugar, or do people need more of it when they're using it in like coffee, for example?
I don't think they need more of it. I mean, I see it packaged in pretty small baggies, right? So,
and I was just gonna also mention, that this sweet leaf xylitol is part of a broader trend in the food industry towards natural and health-conscious ingredients. So there are other companies that sell xylitol-based products. So one of them is called Xyla, which offers a range of xylitol sweeteners sourced from North American hardwood trees. And then similarly, Now Foods also provides xylitol sweeteners that are promoted as good dental aids and sugar alternatives. And many brands have also incorporated xylitol into chewing gums, as you said, mints, and even chocolate, leveraging its dental benefits to enhance health appeal of their products. And these offerings help consumers maintain low sugar without sacrificing the taste. So I think where xylitol has an advantage is in this, dental aspect, right? Like you never think of eating candy and thinking, oh, this is actually good for my teeth or decent for my teeth. Maybe, I don't know this for sure, but I'm thinking gums that specifically say that they're good for your teeth, like Excel White, for example, maybe that has xylitol in it.
Yeah, probably. Or maybe like the gums that claim that they're sugar-free. They don't have glucose, basically glucose-free.
Right.
They have other like sweeteners, I think.
Probably. Like Pure, that brand Pure,
Yeah.
P-U-R. Yeah, I think that probably has some xylitol in it. Yeah.
But it'd be interesting if people start using xylitol like for home cooking. But yeah, for now, currently it's mostly limited to gum.
Yeah, gum and mints and whatnot. And I guess that's the goal of this company, Sweetleaf, is they want to bring it to, a more B2C level, right? They want consumers to be able to buy it as well. And I'm certainly gonna, look, when I'm chewing gum or buying gum, I'm gonna see like, is there xylitol in here, like, or even other products too. I want to see how widespread it becomes in the future. Because I think we're always looking for the next like holy grail sweetener sort of that isn't going to cause cancer or any bad things, right? And that's natural and that, tastes like sugar. So I'm I'm happy to see like more natural sweeteners come to the forefront.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, that's the end of this episode of the Xtalks Food Podcast. If you like today's show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Thanks, everyone, and see you next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Xtalks Food Industry Podcast. If you enjoyed our discussions today, please share the episode with your friends and colleagues, and be sure to subscribe in order to be notified when a new episode is released. To join in on the discussion, you can find Xtalks on social media, email podcast@xtalks.com, or comment on the articles directly. Links are in the show description. Take a moment to join our community at xtalks.com to get access to everything we have to offer, including webinars, job listings, virtual meetings, articles, and more. The views and opinions expressed in the podcast are those of the speakers sharing them. They should not be taken as professional advice and do not necessarily reflect the policy or position Honeycomb Worldwide. For further information, email us at podcast@xtalks.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.